What is up, guys? Lord Nick here, bringing you another One Piece TCG related video. In this video, guys, we're going to be talking about Eustace Kid, the Red Purple Kid, because I promised I would make a Red Purple Kid video. This video is going to be slightly different than my last ones. This one actually has 3 separate deck techs we'll be going over. So we'll be starting off with the one that is based off the cards that I have. Then we're going into more of an aggressive build that is just kind of a for fun one, but actually has some legs to it. I've tested it a bit and it's done pretty well. And then the last one is the speculation on what I think would be the most meta relevant deck. Not necessarily going to be the best deck, but it is the most meta relevant deck. I mean, well, arguably that should be the best deck. But it, all in all, take it with a grain of salt. I think Kid currently is easily the weakest of the 3 that came out of the starter deck 10. He is still probably my favorite one because of the fact that he has the potential to be such an aggro monster. Because of his Dawn -1 effect and the fact that you can play cards that take stuff out of your life pretty regularly with him, and it's not a deficit, is fine. On top of that, if your opponent is trying to swing back and race you, you're okay with it because you're getting stronger as they do it. So ultimately, take it with a grain of salt, but let's get into this deck tech. And so this deck tech is based off of cards that I currently have. So this is going to be the Red Purple Kid of cards, based off cards that I currently own. So this was something I was testing out to see if anything that I built had legs to it. And currently, this build actually isn't that bad. Do I think it's the best build? No. I think there's obviously some better changes and tweaks you can make to it, and you'll see that as we go on through it. But this one was a lot of fun to play still. It has a lot of strengths to it, oddly enough. But it also has some cards that are just kind of weird looking in general. First off, I'm running 3 of the OPO1 Usopp, who draws you a card if your opponent activates an event during your turn. That doesn't seem that relevant, but it actually can be quite relevant of a card for some draw power. But otherwise, he's just a 2K counter, which is really kind of going to be the key to a handful of these cards here. They are 2K counters. So we run a ton of 2K counters into this deck. Specifically, I believe there's 14 in this list. It might be 13. But he's mainly a 2K counter, and he can occasionally actually draw me cards because I'm going to be swinging into my opponent a ton, and I'll have an extra Dawn or 2 here or there, so I might just put a Dawn under him while I could make a bigger attack somewhere else, putting a Dawn under Usopp just so that if I hit a event out of their life, they are less inclined to actually use it. If they use it, it gives me a card back, which is kind of okay because it could draw us into more 2K counters, it could draw us into a body that can actually be more beneficial for the next turn. But as we go through the list, you'll kind of see this card is niche at best, and the biggest reason he's here over over the 2-drop Sanji is because I don't own 2-drop Sanji, and I can't find anybody that has them that's willing to give them to me, and I don't feel like paying the 25 cents for him online and waiting for the $3 shipping. Like it just feels like a waste to me, but it is definitely the better card. But for time being, this card's actually been not too bad. I haven't played him much, but he's a 2K counter at bare minimum. Rush Zoro doesn't need that much explanation. 9-drop Whitebeard. I think every red deck that can should be just slotting in the one of Whitebeard. He's just a really powerful card. 2 of the Brook. So this Brook is a 2K counter. I currently only own 2 of him. I might also have swapped out 2 of the Usopp for 2 of the Brook just in that situation. But I mean, he can be played on curve, give me 2 Dawn, and I could swing in and actually just come in for 6 on my off turn while I'm developing a 3K body. It's not the best thing that I want to do, but it's also another 2K counter, but it also can later on, if all I have is, I might want to establish another body for the next turn, and just having a 3K that I can put some Dawn onto to be able to swing the following turn while still being able to pump up whoever I'm swinging with this turn can be relevant occasionally. 6-drop Sanji has actually been pretty interesting. He's been a nice little mid-game body that can help put pressure on a lot of things, and I think having 6K bodies is very important with Red Purple Luffy rolling around, so we run a decent number of them just to be ready for it. So I was splitting between him and Kid just to kind of get an idea of which of the 2 I prefer. Currently, both of them have seemed okay. I think 6K Rush Sanji might win out, and I might end up just doing 4 of him and drop the Kid entirely. But I haven't quite figured out which one I like the most. Jinbei is just another 2K counter. Again, card I own that's a 2K counter. Perfectly fine. 3 of the Luffy's. I think 4 of the Luffy's is a little bit rough because we have so many non-counters in the deck. And he's such a high cost. Getting to that cost consistently with the cards that I have, not that opportune situation. Magellan is just one of the best 5-drops on curve, sometimes better on a follow-up turn even, where you can just mess up your opponent's curve, where if they're trying to get to 8 or 9 Dawn, you're messing them up because you're sticking them at 7, or you're sticking them, you're sticking them just below where they want to be, and then trying to get rid of it, they have to use blue cards to get rid of it. If they try anything else really to get rid of this card, it is very detrimental to them because they lose 2 Dawn as well. So very solid card, very sticky, monstrous board state, and he's a 6K, which is perfect against Luffy. Khalifa is budget queen, but also a 2K counter. So like she just should be in most decks, even decks that run queen. I think running Khalifa is probably one of the best 2K counters in purple. You just should be running this card. This card is really awesome. 2 Miss All Sunday. She's ramp, she's draw. That's basically all she is. I can get her out of Dawn, which isn't that bad, out of life, which isn't bad. It gives us a 5K body, but I don't want to see her too much because I've played enough of different Croc decks where she annoys the crap out of me being stuck in my hand all the time. Killer, as we mentioned, split him with Sanji. John Bard is just one of our best ramp options. Law is a really good 4-drop blocker, despite the fact everybody's kind of playing around the fact of, oh, this guy's in purple, I need to play around having 6 cards in hand, not 7. It's whatever. I don't care if I get the Dawn minus... It's nice if I get the Dawn -1 effect. If not, it's just a nice blocker. I also run 4 of Heat. This card just synergizes super, super well with Kid, because anytime I want to pump up Kid, I am then pumping up Heat. Which means I could potentially early on get 2 6K attacks, or as we get later, I get a 7K and a 6K with no Dawn. And like I don't have to use a single active Dawn for that. That's insanely powerful. 7-drop Kid because he just makes it harder for people to swing into your leader. He pumps up your leader and gives you a really big body on top. Card is epic. He might go up to 4 of. I like him at 3 in this particular build, but. It's a really good card. Then we run the 1 of Rad Beam, 2 of the Bad Manners Kick Course, which would be actually 4 of Gum Gum Jet Gatling if I had 4 of them. I only have 2 some reason. I don't know what happened to my other 2, but I would say that this card is just the better one because out of life, getting an extra Dawn is really relevant in this deck. Minusing the attack on your opponent can be, I guess, if you're trying to save life, but this deck is aggressive. It doesn't want to save life. It necessarily wants to lose its first 2 as fast as possible to be able to swing bigger with your kid. So to kind of play into that aggressive nature, I also have an aggro kid build here. So this is built around rushing and ramping, and that is it. There is no blockers in this list whatsoever, if you can tell. So we run 4 of Cavendish, or 2 of Cavendish, because he does exactly what we want him to do, which is take away my early life, give me rush, come in with an attack. The faster we get to 3 life, the faster we can swing bigger attacks at our opponent. Sanji does a similar thing. He pumps himself by 2. So he becomes a 5K attacker, and if you have any Rusted Dawn, if you played anything this turn, those 2 Rusted Dawn go on to him. So he goes from 5 to 7. So you have a 7K attacker that gives you a card from your life, which then enables your leader to be a bigger part. So this card is just amazing. It's a 2K. It should be in every kid list. It is the best 2K for kid. For Rush Zoro, just for Rush, because we're all about Rush. Again, Whitebeard again. We have 2 of the Rush Sanji because we don't want to have too many of Cavendish because we don't want to have to play something that always has to drain our life. But in the same vein, we don't want to have something that always requires 2 Dawn. So having a 2-2 split is perfectly fine. 2 of the Brooks because 2K counter is nice to have, but also just having extra Dawn that we can put on stuff is pretty useful. 2 of the 5-drop Luffy's because getting around blockers is a great way of being able to end the game. 3 of the 10-drop Luffy's, similar reason as the previous list. 2 of Sasaki, he is a ramp card, but he is also a 2K counter, perfectly useful. 4 X-Drakes, it is a 2K counter, that is also a decent rated body. 5/5 isn't the best, but it's okay, but it also has the potential to then trash a card from my opponent's hand, which could matter in terms of allowing me to get the win off on them. Khalifa, because as I mentioned, best draw card. 2 more Miss Sunday for more ramp. 2 Rush Kaidos because this card is just one of the best purple option at late games right now. He is a monster. Being able to drop past all 6 costs means that you can get past pretty much every blocker in the game. He then has Rush, and if you're minusing Dawn and you have a Heat out, this just makes another 6K attacker for you. This card is insanely powerful and is a great game ender, and with a deck that is trying to rush down our opponent, this is a great way to do it. Heat, because this card just like I said, synergizes with our leader. We have Beppo, so we can rebuild our Dawn, because this list has a lot more Dawn minus effects that are going to be activated or more costly Dawn minus effects, in the fact of that we have Kaido here. We now have 4 of the kids. We have X Drakes, we have Khalifas. Like we have a decent amount of Dawn minus effects. So having a Beppo, I think, is more important than ramping with Jean Bart, being able to consistently get back, and the fact that we want to be attacking a ton. This is an attacker. If you notice, this list does not have as many 6K attackers on the list as the previous one. Like we have these ones, and arguably this one, and then this Sanji as well. But we also have bigger end games, so that's kind of the point, is we're trying to get to the end game faster. We also have Fiery Doll to be more aggressive with our leader. So we have options to be more aggressive. I've ran into a deck or two that has a random Fiery Doll or two in it, and it has been very annoying because it doesn't require you to be a Whitebeard, mind you. It's just 2 to gain 4 power, which can end a game. Like we've noticed that like 3 to get 6 power is a pretty good rate. So 2 for 4 is the same exact rate, just for a little bit less. It makes a big difference in a lot of games. And in this particular list, because we are going so aggressive, this can be an end game finisher with just a 2 cost investment. So if we are somehow out of Dawn and we just need 2 cost investment, hey, guess what? Fiery Doll can get us there. Then our last list, guys, is going to be our more or less competitive kid. So competitive kid, the reason this is more competitive is this has a similar endgame to the aggro endgame, but it has a more meaningful way to do it, get there, and it has more replicatable, has more ability to replicate, getting us as much power on our leader as possible. So we keep running the Sanjis for similar reasons. We cut the Zoros down to 3 so that we can add in more top end. We then have the Edward Newgate with 3 of the Luffy. We add in 2 of the film 8-drop Utas, because she does basically exactly what Kid does. But if we have played Kid before and then we can play Uta on top of it, guess what? Uta then allows us. So let's say we play Kid on 7. Let's say we have 7 Dawn, we play Kid, we go down to 6. Next turn we go up to 8, we play Uta, we go down to 6 again. But now our Kid is a 9K, our leader is a 6K. We swing with Kid. Our leader is now a 7K before we even use his ability. We can then have another 8K ability and then our 9K attack. And then on top of that, to swing into our leader or a Kid, you need 8K and 9K respectively, or 7K and 9K respectively. That is an insane amount of investment from our opponents that they have to do. Uta is a very solid card to use. I don't want to run too many of her, though, because she does require 2 Dawn minus to do that, but she is a great top-end addition. Khalifa is for the reasons stated before. Rush Kaido, same thing. Great top-end finisher. Great way to get past blockers. Great way to finish the game out. Queen, because this is one of the best blockers in the game. Purple, its price point is now over $30 just for this card. This card is insane. This card is very good in terms of being a blocker. It's super efficient because on play you get to draw 2 cards, trash a card for 1 Dawn minus, which isn't that big a deal in this deck. We have ways of getting the Dawn back. And we also have cards that care about us minusing Dawn in the form of Heat. And in this case, we also run Wire, which we will get to here in a bit. Just a super efficient blocker. It is the best purple blocker in the game, reflected by its price to buy this card. 2 laws, because is mentioned in the last list that had him, which was the first list we talked about. People are playing around the effect more. So having a 4-drop blocker is meaningful, but we don't necessarily need 4 of him because people play around it. So the chances of getting it off is more or less when our opponent is just taking hit after hit after hit. So just having less of him because we don't need him as much. And we have Queen to substitute for a similar costed blocker that is more impactful to getting us more card advantage. Heat, because of how well he synergizes with our leader and the fact that we have more Dawn minus effects in this list, means that Heat is just always a 6K. Beppo, because Beppo gets us back the Dawn that we are now flooding out of our Dawn list. Out of our Dawn deck. So Beppo is going to be getting it back. He's an aggressive attacker for us. On play, he gets it back, and then on attack, he gets it back. So Beppo is a good way for us to recur the Dawn that we're losing, because we are playing kind of a tempo game more so than a ramp game. Kid, because of previously mentioned, he does what Uda does, but this kid is just really, really strong in general, and having him as a 4 of is more impactful. I've debated moving him to 3 of and Uda to 3 of, but I really like having the 7 cost kid is very prevalent on curve, because he effectively becomes an additional blocker, because we are now forcing our opponent to have more Dawn investment to attack us with any of their mid-game characters. And then Wire is an early blocker that we can get out, and anytime we minus a Dawn, if we minus a Dawn on our turn or opponent's turn, we get to draw a discard, which allows us to fix our hand and find the handful of 2Ks that are in this list, which there are only 8 of them. That being said, we are running a little bit more. We are running, I think, 10 blockers, but again, this is still much more of an aggressive list, so I think that the numbers being down to 10 blockers and 8 2Ks is more reflective of the fact that the list wants to be punching constantly, so we don't mind as much to be as low. We just have to be punching. And then we go to our events. So we do have a little bit of ramp in this. I think Lead Performer Disaster is just great. It's one of the better ramp cards currently. At a 4, it seems bad, but it draws you a card as well, which can keep us kind of okay. But as previously mentioned with the previous kid list, you want to take the first 2 life as soon as you can, because it then means that your attacks become bigger. So this card just enables you to get cards back, get you set up so you can get to your late game faster while you're taking that damage, and then being able to punch your opponent as much as you want. Gum Gum Jet Gatling, as we mentioned before, I would say probably is a 4 of, but I have it still split with the cards that I have, only due to the fact that both have their respective rights. I think in this list specifically, you could if all you have is 4 jet gun, if you have 4 jet Gatlings, do it. If not, Bad Manners Kick Course is not a bad option. It stops an attack. It's fine. And then 1 Rad Beam, because Rad Beam's just a great way to keep yourself alive and be able to turn tempo. All in all, this list is probably the most competitive of the 3 lists. I would say all of them can do pretty okay at a locals. I don't know if this list will be able to do anything higher than locals. Maybe in a small, like a small numbered regionals where there's not as many of the maybe the Luffy's. I would say like this deck, this list particularly has to get to its late game a little faster. It kind of functions in a similar vein to Luffy, but with more blockers to get there naturally. So it is a little bit slower to get to its top end, but that's just so you have time to take some of the damage that you need to be able to then swing really big turns into the mid to late game. Because once this deck turns its tempo on, it's very difficult for an opponent to come back and take that tempo back, because Kid will be swinging 6 to 7K every single turn, and then it becomes 8K every turn, and then it becomes 9K every turn. And that could be very problematic for an opponent, and this deck has that potential to be just a devastating force against a lot of people. And it just, I mean, it's a simple strategy. It's kind of the same like red deck win strategy you see in Magic, which is face is the place. You got to hit face. You just keep going face. You don't care what your opponent's developing. You try to counter out of it, and you try to beat them down before they can beat you, especially because there's so many 4 life leaders. There's quite a few Luffy's that are 3 life leaders. If you put enough tempo on a Luffy to where he's constantly blocking out, he's not getting to ramp, then you're not in any threat of dying to him. You have more life than him by quite a bit, and because this deck has the ability to get to 6K so early, so fast, it actually nullifies the Luffy pretty well. This is a decent like rock beat scissor moment for this deck. Your leader can get to 6K early on. If Luffy's swinging in and gets you up to 5K, you're swinging back at 7. He has to dedicate a 2K counter every single time to just your leader attack without you putting a single Dawn on your leader. On top of that, if you have a heat out, you then have another 6K attacker. And if you've gotten to the mid to late game, you're matching his big drops with your own big drops. So he has less life to work with as you are now pounding him in the face sooner. So if he's down on life, if he is down to 2 or 1 life at the same time that you both are reaching your 7 to 8 costs, you're winning because you have more life than him. And he has less ability to actually deal with the things that you are dropping out because you have basically the same late game as him. So all in all, Kid can match the Luffy. Now, can Kid match the other decks? I don't know. I personally like this deck the most. I think he has a lot of the most unique play diversity that some of the others don't, as the fact that we showed you a purely aggro list, a more mid-rangey list, and then this list that is kind of leaning towards the top end more. So he has most versatility out of the red-purple leaders. So maybe you found these deck lists insightful. Maybe you found a deck for Kid that you enjoy. If you do, leave a comment down below. Let me know how you feel. Let me know what you're looking forward to. I'll probably be doing updates to a lot of the different leaders that I've already talked about when OPO5 hits. As I start getting to test and do things, I'll also be making Sakazuchi lists and maybe a Rosinante list, because I really like Rosinante and I like the premise of the leader. And I've seen a lot of people starting to test it. It seems like it actually has some legs under it that people are not expecting it to have. So we'll probably get into that at some point. But if you guys enjoyed this, please leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment, especially because I want to hear from you guys. And until the next video, I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye, guys.